My aunt's secret affair with a black American. A love that changed everything. My aunt's life was the picture of perfection, or at least that's what it looked like to everyone around her. Married for nearly 2 decades to a man who provided for her and loved her in his own quiet way, she had what many would call stability. Their modest home was always spotless, her garden neatly maintained, and their conversations polite. Yet beneath the surface of that calm exterior, my aunt was restless. Her husband was a man of habits. He rose at the same time every day, ate the same breakfast, and returned home from work at the same predictable hour. Though dependable, he lacked spontaneity. He wasn't unkind or neglectful, but over time, his attentions had shifted away from her. Their conversations grew transactional, centered around bills, household repairs, and the weather. The warmth and passion they once shared had slowly faded, replaced by a silence that grew louder with each passing year. At first, my aunt blamed herself. She wondered if her feelings were unreasonable, a sign of her own selfishness or immaturity. After all, wasn't a steady, secure life something to be grateful for? Yet she couldn't ignore the void in her heart. She yearned for something more, something that made her feel alive again. She craved conversation that went beyond the mundane, a connection that didn't feel like a chore. Her discontent manifested in small, unnoticeable ways. She started dressing up more, even when she wasn't going anywhere. She lingered longer in front of the mirror, paying attention to details she used to overlook. A spark of defiance ignited within her, though she wasn't yet sure what it meant or where it would lead. Her husband, oblivious to the changes, continued in his predictable rhythm. On weekends, he mowed the lawn or watched television. Even when they sat in the same room, the emotional distance between them felt insurmountable. Friends and neighbors admired them, often commenting on how perfect they seemed together. It was almost ironic how appearances could deceive. My aunt would smile politely, nodding along, all while wondering if anyone could see the cracks beneath the surface. She envied those who spoke of passion and adventure, even if she doubted such things were meant for her anymore. Then, one afternoon while running an errand in town, her life changed in a way she never anticipated. She was in line at a small cafe, a place she rarely visited, when she heard a warm, deep voice behind her. "Excuse me," the man said. "Do you know if this place serves espresso?" She turned around and saw him, a tall, confident black man with a smile that instantly disarmed her. She stammered something about the menu and moved aside, embarrassed by her reaction. There was something magnetic about him, something she couldn't quite place. She quickly paid for her coffee and stepped outside, but before she could leave, he approached her again. "Thanks for the help back there," he said, holding his drink with a grin. "I'm new in town, and I appreciate the guidance." The conversation was brief but left her flustered. He introduced himself casually, explaining that he had recently moved to the area for work. His charm was effortless, his demeanor exuding a mix of confidence and warmth that felt unfamiliar, yet intriguing. She found herself smiling more than she had in the weeks, maybe months. Over the next few weeks, their paths crossed again at the grocery store, in the park, even during one of her solitary walks through the neighborhood. Each encounter was unplanned, or at least it seemed that way. They exchanged pleasantries at first, but gradually their conversations grew longer and more personal. He asked about her interests, her life, and what made her happy. These were questions she hadn't been asked in years. Her initial reaction was to keep him at a distance. She knew how this might look, how it might feel to someone watching from the outside. But his attention was intoxicating. He didn't just listen to her words, he seemed to hear the unspoken emotions behind them. She found herself laughing freely in his presence, something she hadn't done in a long time. One evening, as my aunt sat alone in her living room, her phone buzzed. It was him, sending a simple text. "I hope your day was good." She stared at the screen for what felt like an eternity, torn between ignoring it and responding. Eventually, she typed back, "It was fine. Thank you, hope yours was too." That small exchange opened the door to more frequent conversations. They started messaging each other daily, their texts gradually becoming more personal. He shared stories about his life, his struggles, and his dreams. She confided in him about her frustrations, her unfulfilled dreams, and the emptiness she felt in her marriage. The inevitable happened. One night, after a long walk together, the tension that had been simmering between them reached a boiling point. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face, his fingertips lingering on her cheek just a second too long. And that was it, the moment she let go of restraint and allowed herself to surrender to what she had been denying for so long. Their first night together was electric, filled with unspoken emotions and an undeniable chemistry that neither of them could resist any longer. He was slow, patient, reading her every reaction like a well-worn book. For the first time in years, she felt desired. Not as a wife, not as a homemaker, but as a woman. In the weeks that followed, they met in secret, carving out stolen moments together. It was thrilling, intoxicating, until reality started to catch up with her. She would come home to her husband, the weight of her actions pressing down on her, each moment with him now tainted by the knowledge of what she had done. And then, the inevitable unraveling. A message left carelessly on her phone, a glance from her husband that lasted a beat too long. The night he finally asked, "Is there someone else?" The truth, once set in motion, could not be undone. What followed was a storm of emotions, heartbreak, anger, and an ending she had never anticipated. She had sought passion, but at what cost? The life she had once known was now irreversibly changed, and for the first time in years, she was forced to confront the person she had become. And yet, despite everything, she didn't regret it, because for the first time in a long time, she had felt something real.